For the last 30,000 or so galactic cycles, I made it a point to always cheer for my assigned species' survival. There are some inhabitants on Terra during their early 21st century who might deeply empathize with this seemingly hopeless mindset, Rams fans and objectivists chief among them. It felt decidedly unhealthy to clap when yet another species managed to blithely wipe itself out of existence. My most recent quarry had met its end in a terribly boring, though not atypical fashion. Atomic weapons fell into the hands of some of the species' more excitable members, and Old Man Nuclear Winter paid a visit soon after. I stuck around for a few thousand of their local stellar cycles to see if any stragglers would regroup, but no luck. Surprisingly hard to farm in irradiated soil. The species I observed before that, though, had a real fan in me. Their digital and space ages went swimmingly, and they were well on their way to interstellar travel. Alas, the universe is moody, to say the least. I moved myself glumly out of the way as a black hole swept unceremoniously through their quaint galactic corner. Thwomp. Gone. Humans, though. Humans were a spectacle from the beginning. One of my civilization's innumerable quantum probes had noted changes in atmospheric content signaling life, and I was lucky enough to be assigned to Terra when my aforementioned atomic debacle had settled, the temper of this fledgling race. I arrived around their year 540 and was privy to some of the greatest infighting I had ever seen. War was waged continually with all manner of absurd justification, and entire subsections of their species suffered monumental oppression. Their vision of the future was quite limited, their penchant for conflict notably less so. Despite all this, I held true to my word and was genuinely pleased when they managed to avoid nuclear conflict following the second of their admittedly ornery world wars. I'd seen bigger, threatened by each other and buoyed by ideology. The Terrans, particularly the Americans and Soviets, pushed astronautical technology to new levels at an unfathomable pace. I cannot recall a civilization that progressed so brazenly into the space age. In the same vein, the dawn of their equally virulent digital age led to an unprecedented degree of globalization during peacetime, an unusual combination in any species' eyes. Should I have seen then what they would be capable of? Yes, things were undoubtedly looking up for this plucky race, but their rampant success was fated to turn on them. Trust me when I say that anthropogenic climate change was a real doozy as far as extinction events go. It grew quietly in the background, always concealed and then ignored until it was far too late to reverse. The pattern playing out on Terra was not unusual. A minority, fast becoming a majority, of scientists pointed insistently to the lurking terror and warned the established powers. For a variety of reasons, really just two actually, hubris and wealth, the threat was addressed with comically insufficient attention. Then people started dying. Futile efforts in the face of now unfathomable odds fell flat, and the curtain drew on another species. I'd seen enough civilizations drown in their own oceans. The irony of a species wiped out by their own cradle not lost on me, to know that humans were heading the same way. How wrong, how spectacularly they proved me to be the dunce. The fifth decade of their 21st century saw impending calamity. All the markers of irreversible climate change were there. I had been dutifully recording them in my logs for over 100 years, and little was being done. Then an inexplicable, fantastic shift that eclipsed in audacity even their early space programs. The planet's resources, both raw and intellectual, were poured into a singular solution. I'd seen the tactic work many times before, but never applied with such vigor so late in the game. It was as if they had been waiting till they were at a disadvantage to make the challenge and subsequent victory particularly sweet. Synthetic chemicals flooded the atmosphere from all corners of the globe, stabilizing the climate within 10 years of the first cohesive efforts. I can recall well the glowing report I sent home after that wonderful turnaround. On the other end of the galaxy, indifferent but nonetheless impressed, officials heard the first demand, and a few of my friends coughed up quite a bit of money. It was a rather sporting line of work. In the ensuing decades, I was inexplicably proud of my little planet, like a dumb child with a particularly vivacious ant farm. Conflict had dropped to a minimum, Bioengineering extended lifespans and intellect, and the space age was back in full swing. I watched quietly as autonomous spacecraft went about their business, amassing resources and undertaking great orbital construction projects. Slightly annoyed, I even had to move out of my cozy Lagrange point as humans began populating it with their own satellites. I found a new perch, higher up and a bit more remote, but still close enough to watch the action. There was, however, a subtle but growing concern that all this peace and prosperity might sow the seeds of a new kind of disaster. The spirit of competition and conflict had driven much of their early innovation. Now, with everyone holding hands and singing Kumbaya under the stars, some wondered if humanity might grow complacent. They were becoming a bit too uniform, a tad too cooperative for their own good. But I digress. The ride was smooth, and I enjoyed seeing them thrive. Then, as if on cue to prove my concerns valid, came the aliens. The arrival was not the peaceful first contact they had dreamed about. Instead, it was an invasion, sudden and brutal. An armada of ships from a distant star system, looking to claim Terra's resources, demanded submission or annihilation. It was a classic interstellar bully scenario, one I'd seen play out more than once. The humans, though, they were something else. There was panic, sure, but also a swift, almost instinctual pivot to a wartime economy. The unity they had built in peacetime now served them well in war. Factories churned out weapons and defenses at an astonishing rate. Scientists who had once worked on climate solutions now turned their minds to war tactics, and leaders who had been bureaucrats became generals. I watched in awe as they repelled the initial onslaught. Their sheer tenacity and ingenuity were breathtaking. The invaders had not anticipated such a fierce resistance from what they considered a backwater planet. Humans utilized everything they had, from advanced AI and drones to good old-fashioned guerrilla tactics. The conflict raged on for years, with losses on both sides, but humanity held its ground. The turning point came when they managed to capture one of the alien ships. Reverse engineering the technology, they made significant advancements in a short time. Suddenly, they were not just defending, they were counter-attacking. The invaders, realizing they had underestimated their quarry, began to retreat. By the end of the conflict, humanity stood victorious, but forever changed. They had proven themselves not just survivors, but formidable warriors. Their society had become more militarized, their technological prowess even more advanced, and their unity solidified by shared struggle. As they prepared to take the fight to the stars, ensuring they would never be caught off guard again, I couldn't help but feel a pang of pride? Maybe. Perhaps this species, so chaotic and unpredictable, had finally found a purpose that would drive them to even greater heights. And maybe, just maybe, they would be the ones to finally break the cycle of self-destruction I had witnessed so many times before. So I settled in for the next chapter of human history, eager to see where their journey would take them. Whether they would become the new conquerors of the galaxy or the guardians of peace, one thing was certain. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and I, their eternal observer, would be there to watch it all unfold.